Want to do a quick video on RV power. Don't have a tripod. Hi, welcome to Grateful Hearts Ranch. All right, this video is going to be kind of weird because it's not really anything to do about ranching, but it might be. All right, so here's the situation. Raw land, no utilities. We got an RV. Now, RVs generally have a battery in them, so to power lights and things like that, so that you can be totally off grid, totally away from power, and you can still go boondocking. So it's basically, living in your RV for a short period of time till the battery dies or something like that. Now, if you have solar panels to charge the battery, you can extend that a little bit longer, but I mean, you're pretty limited in even what you can run. Lights, maybe the water pumps and things like that, so your faucets would work. You have a limited supply of water, so that kind of stuff. Anyway, so it's really more for a temporary situation. The next step up is to provide power or get power. Like if you're at an RV park, they have hookups, generally power hookups. Now, I've never been to one, so I don't know what they have. I've seen videos, obviously, so I know that there are things that you can plug your RV into to provide power. So it'll run everything: the air conditioner, the furnace, if you have, a heater, furnace, refrigerator, basically every electrical appliance in the RV indefinitely, as long as there's power there. I want to talk a little bit about our situation. So not all RVs are the same, and I'm talking primarily U.S. RVs because this is specifically how they are wired, or at least how ours is wired anyway. Now, throughout this video, feel free to just listen to my melodic voice and go about your business. I will be inserting images for things that I'm trying to emphasize, and I will make this little noise so that you can know to look at the screen if you're currently distracted. Now, if you're not currently distracted and you're watching the whole video, well, then you're gonna see it all anyway. Okay, so a little electrical theory here just to make my point. So if you have a residential home wiring, at least on my house, I have two 120 volt, they call it line 1 and line 2. Doesn't really matter which one is line 1 or line 2. And then there's a common, return, whatever you want to call it. And then you provide the ground by pounding a stake, 8-foot, ground rod into the ground, and there's your ground. Or at least that's the way mine is. So it comes in the breaker box, and then the breakers feed all the different circuits in the house. So, anything that runs on 120 volts, it only uses one leg of that incoming power. If you have something that needs 240 volts, like a electric dryer or an electric heat, electric water heater or stove, range, that kind of thing, anything that runs on 240 volts, it uses both of those lines. So if you go common to one, that's 120 volts between those two. Common to the other, that's 120 volts to those two. Line to line, that's where it's 240 volts. And so you'll see like two switches, a double breaker basically, that provides the 240 volt circuit to whatever you're powering. In the RV that we have, it takes a 50 amp 240 volt plug to plug it into power. Something like this. So you have line 1, line 2, common, and this would be the ground connection. As opposed to a standard, 120 volt extension cord that just has, I forget which one is line. One of them's line, one of them's return, and one of them's ground. So that's how that works. Anyway, so this is what we would plug into a receptacle to get 240 volts at 50 amps. Now, we don't have any 240 volt circuits on the RV. So what they have done is basically taken the 240 volt incoming power and just made it to 120 volt circuits. Nothing wrong with doing that. It's just nothing runs on 240, so everything just runs on 120, and so you just get two 50 amp circuits that way. Some RVs only have a 30 amp plug, and some RVs only have a 15 amp plug. I believe this is a 15 amp plug. I'm not an electrician. If you're an electrician, cut me some slack. We'll go with that. So 15, 30, and 50. 50 amps can carry more current than the 30 or the 15. 30 carries more than the 15. Now, another thing in the RV industry is, let's say you take your RV to grandma's house and you want to plug it in, but you have this 50 amp plug and grandma doesn't have a 50 amp outlet for you to plug this into. What are you going to do? Well, they make, in fact, you can get these on Amazon. They call them Dogbones. And so it's basically the end. This is not going to work out well because I don't have one to plug in, but you have this end that would, it's made for this. Use your imagination. You would plug this into the dog bone, and then the dog bone, the other side of the dog bone would have a plug, but it'd be a 30 amp plug. And then they have another one where you could plug your 30 amp plug into a regular extension cord. No, you plug this is now a 30 amp plug. You plug that into a 30 amp receptacle, dog bone receptacle, and then the other side of the dog bone is a 15 amp plug, which goes into any circuit, any outlet, any normal residential outlet that grandma would have. And so now you can power things in your RV. If you are at grandma's house and you have a 50 amp RV and you're plugging into a 15 amp outlet, you obviously can't run, and you have the dog bone adapters, you obviously can't run everything. You may not know that you can't run everything, but you can't run everything. You can charge the battery, you can run the lights, you can run the refrigerator, you can run the TVs if you have entertainment systems. Most things you can run. Furnace, I think you can probably get away with. Air conditioners, probably not. And what will happen is hopefully it will pop the breaker at grandma's house. Now, if grandma has a fuse box, then it'll probably melt the fuse. Now, you do hope these safety protections are in place and functioning, because if you try to draw too much power over a very small extension cord, it could cause a fire. And that would be very bad, or muy malo for my Spanish-speaking friends, or cock, if you happen to be Klingon. So why have we taken this long journey of power for RV stuff? Well, we are in a place that does not have utilities. It's going to be there a while, before we get power, if and when we get power. So I had to get a little creative with the power situation, and had to learn that if you have a 120 volt generator, you can still power most things in the RV with, a little Honda generator. You just can't run the big air conditioner. So what I did is basically hooked up a receptacle, went to Lowe's and bought a receptacle that this would plug into, and the 120 volts from the generator I just applied to both sides. Again, my RV did not have any 240 volt circuits, so I was good. It just needed power, 120 volts power on both legs. And that's okay. Not ideal, but that's okay. Okay, so now we'll pause the RV electrical situation for now. Let's assume that we are running off of 120 volts on both legs and everything is fine unless it gets too hot and we would need the air conditioner, and then I would get fussed at. So now I want to cover solar systems or not off-grid power. Let's call it that. The most basic, bare minimum system is a battery and an inverter. Now, this battery is a lead acid battery. I believe it's a 12 volts. It's for a lawnmower. I don't have a lawnmower that this fits in. My lawnmower is a push mower and it doesn't need batteries at all. But apparently there are lawnmowers that need batteries, and so you could put one of these in there. It will also power a small inverter. So now this one is a cigarette lighter, so you would have to wire something here and something here from the battery. Make sure you get it right. The polarity, I mean, plus and minus, because that's important on DC, on power stuff. And then you get 120 volts out this outlet. Now, it's not a lot. This is a very small inverter. This is, and it's very old too, because it still says 110 volts. And everything's 120 these days. It doesn't matter. It's the same thing. They just call it different. It's about 120 volts. 110, 120, same thing. This, let me see. Oh, 150 watt continuous, 300 peak. Now, I'm not recommending this. I mean, you know, if you need a 150 watt continuous inverter, seems to work. What this is going to power is like, you might be able to charge your laptop, run some lights, TV maybe, that kind of stuff. It's not a huge power provider. Now you can get larger inverters that will, you know, provide more power, and they're bigger and they have bigger battery cables and on and on and on. So you size the inverter to your situation. Now, I know I'm going to get the question, well, you know, here's my situation. I got this and that and this, and I need an inverter that'll run it. Well, I don't know. There's a lot more involved than that. So, like I said, this might power a laptop for a while. I don't know how long, because I don't have, you know, there's calculations and stuff. This battery is pretty small. Can you see the battery? This lawnmower battery is pretty small, so it doesn't have a whole lot of charge in it, comparatively speaking to a larger system. So, you know, that's kind of how this works. But basic system, battery, and inverter, and you have 120 volt AC power. Well, what if you want to run your laptop for a week? Well, then you'd probably want to get several of these and hook them in parallel. So plus to plus to plus to plus to plus to plus, minus to minus to minus to minus, 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 minus. You can string together however many you want, and that will provide power longer, but at whatever rate your inverter can handle. Let's say you want to run more. Well, you can get a bigger inverter that's going to draw the battery down more. So bigger inverter, you're going to need more batteries. I like big batteries, and I cannot lie. at some point your battery's going to die. So you're going to have to charge it up. You can do that in one of several ways. If you have a generator, you could run the generator with a charger, and the charger could charge the battery. That's kind of inefficient. I wouldn't recommend that, but if that's what you have, that's what you have. You can get solar panels. You would get solar panels and a charge controller, and it's basically the charger, and that would charge the battery up. And the reason you need that is because the charge controller will stop charging when the battery is fully charged. If you just hook solar panels directly to the battery, there's nothing that's going to prevent that from overcharging the battery, and you could cause a fire, and that would be bad, and all that, you know. So those are the basic components of an off-grid power system. You've got, you know, the battery, you've got the inverter to create your power, and then you have some sort of charger depending on how you're charging it. So if you're using solar panels as your input, you want a charge controller. That basically takes the energy from the solar panels and charges the battery. If you have a generator that's feeding a normal battery charger, the battery charger knows how to charge the battery up properly, and so that's how that works. Now, if you want to upgrade, say, well, this is just not enough power for me, well, you can just get a bigger inverter, maybe. And then now your battery's going to drain faster. But if it's, you know, not a big deal, if it's not doing it too fast, then you may be okay. Otherwise, well, okay, well then now I got to add more batteries. Well, okay, well, you know, now during the day, the solar panels are not charging up the battery completely. So, you know, at night I may be running out of power. So I need more solar panels or maybe a bigger charge controller. You know, so, but each one of those things can grow to meet your particular needs. Instead of, you know, going out and spending $50,000 on a complete solar setup that you know, need to turn the lights on or something. Now, another option is what they call in solar generators, and it's basically batteries, the inverter, the charge controller, charger, all in one little, you know, carryable thing. And so you can plug things into that. They're limited in power, but, you know, like they would run a refrigerator for several hours. They would power lights and computers and, you know, charge up computers. One I've got has got USB outputs, so you can actually just plug like a phone into it and charge your phone. It's got one of these, a receptacle for one of these, so you could plug some sort of, you know, cigarette lighter plug into it. I don't really know what uses cigarette lighter plugs other than lighters. And so that might be an option if you want something that's relatively compact, but has everything in it that you need to provide the power. Now, you would have to get solar panels to plug into there, but that's the only external component to something like that. Now, prior to solar generators kind of becoming a thing, they had what they call, they're calling them an all-in-one now. Basically, it's all you would need to do is provide a battery and solar panels, and then you would have a complete system there. So that's what I had. That was step 2 for the RV. I had a system that the output was 120 volts, but it was 3 kilowatts. So it wasn't a lot, but it was enough to run things. Okay, so this is the homemade DIY power wall. This is battery management system and just safety here. This is the inverter. Now, what this inverter does is it's a 3,000 watt inverter, and the connections are the battery is here, solar comes in here, and then you have inputs and outputs. So you can see that my ground is disconnected here. Anyway, what I did was I created these little battery packs. I have videos on all this. So each one of these is a single cell. And so it's either somewhere 3 to 4 volts. And so there's 7 of these, so that makes 24 volts. I built it because I really wanted to learn kind of all the ins and outs about, building a system like that. Wouldn't recommend that for the novice. In fact, I probably spent twice as much as you would for, like a solar generator or something. But it's a nice system. It's 3 kilowatts, so. So prior to getting solar panels, I had my all-in-one 3 kilowatt unit, and then I had the battery, and that was it. So I could run off the battery for a little while, but then I'd have to charge it up somehow. And I had, I've got like a small little Honda generator, and I could hook that up, and that worked very well. If it was at night and the batteries were low, I could turn the generator on, and that would provide power for not only whatever I was running, but it would also charge the battery up. The inverter itself, the inverter and the battery, if the inverter was inverting, the inverter was making power, it could handle the load of the big air conditioner in the RV. When it's connected to a generator that is undersized, basically the AC shut the generator down because it was pulling too much current. So the idea is that if you have AC power coming into the inverter, just pass it through to the load instead of, converting it to DC and then reconverting it to AC. That's just wasting energy. So they'll just pass that through. And that they all do that as far as I know. Now, if you don't have AC power coming in, then you're pulling energy from the battery, you're making AC and sending that out to the load. And if you have solar panels connected up to it, that's the DC side. So that charges the battery and or provides power for your load. So in that situation, if I had solar panels charging up the batteries, the air conditioner coming on wouldn't have killed the generator because it wasn't running, but the inverter itself, the system that I had, could have powered the air conditioner. So what if you wanted to charge up the batteries with a generator, but you didn't want it to get killed by the air conditioner? You'd basically have to get a separate battery charger for your battery, plug that into the generator so the generator can only see the battery charger. The battery charger charges the batteries, and then if there's any excess or whatever, that power gets inverted out to the load. That would have worked. I didn't have that, so the generator died. So there's a company outside of Dallas that called Signature Solar, and they have come out with a device called a Chargeverter. And what that is it's basically a battery charger that runs either off of 120 volts or 240 volts, and it will charge up a 48 volt battery. Now, 48 volt systems are what you would run, what you want to run if you're running higher power, like you want to run your house off of a, you want to put a system together to run your house, you'd want it to be 48 volts. The reason being is there's a lot of current, a lot of DC current going through there to make the amount of power that you would need to run a house. So like the smaller system that I have is a 24 volt system. You can get 12 volt systems. Each time you step down, the amperage, the current goes up to provide the same amount of power. So there's no way I would want to run a house off of a 12 volt system. 48 volt system, it's okay. So like I said, the Chargeverter takes either 120 volts or 240 volts and charges up a 48 volt battery. So if you have a very small Honda generator, you could run 120 volts into the Chargeverter and it would charge up a 48 volt battery. Now it may not do it as quickly as the needs are. In other words, you may be drawing more power than the generator can provide to the Chargeverter to charge the battery. The other area where this comes in is some generators do not put out clean power. In other words, You know, they work great on construction sites because they don't care. You know, the power equipment doesn't really care that much about clean power. But computers and TV sets and, you know, sensitive electronics do care. They want a clean sine wave output. So what generator manufacturers have done is to make generators cheaper, they just don't clean the power up before it goes out. So you can take one of those generators now, feed it into the Chargeverter, and then the Chargeverter will charge the battery with clean power, and then the inverter that you have will put out clean power. So then that's your system. So it's a very niche product, very specific applications. It fills a couple of them, and something to think of think about if you need that. So that's about it, I think. If you have, look, don't post a question, will this inverter run my refrigerator? I have no idea. And you know, you just have to look, what is your load? You know, what is the refrigerator draw in terms of power? It may run on 300 watts. It may run on 400 watts. It may run on 500 watts. It may run on 1,000 watts. But whatever you're trying to power, and add all those things up, and that will give you an idea how big of an inverter you need. Now, how long you want to run that on battery power will determine how big your battery needs to be. And I don't know, you know, I don't know, there may be a formula, but I'm not going to be able to say, okay, well, you've got a 6,000 watt inverter, you need a battery this size. I don't know. And it may be some trial and error too. So, you know, I can't answer those questions. If you're building a system, you know, like a large system, and you need like people that know what they're doing to help you with it, I know a guy. And he does this for a living. He charges money for it. But, you know, if that's the situation you're in, then let me know, and I can point you in the right direction, and you can talk with that person. Other than that, if you have any just like general questions about this stuff, you can leave it below, and I'll get back to you. Other than that, thanks for watching, and I'll see you again soon. Please like, share, subscribe, and hit the bell.